name's Tony Strickland. I'm your mayor here in Huntington Beach. And obviously we're known as Surf City, USA, and I'd be remiss if I didn't mention today is National Beach Day. So it's a great day for Huntington Beach. I make a point to do these town halls and community coffees so we can have engagement and interaction. As I'm out in the community, a lot of people have asked me questions about the air show. Is the air show going to happen this year? I heard there's a lot of lawsuits in the air show, the settlement of the air show. And so I thought it would be very important today to talk about where we are as of today in the air show. And I will tell you, there will be an air show here this year from September 29th to October 1st. And I'll tell you, from my perspective, it's probably one of my proudest moments is doing what we had to do to get a settlement done, because if there's no settlement, there was no air show. And when you hear the economic numbers coming from one of the top economic firms in the country about what the air show means to us as Huntington Beach economically, it's hard to put these numbers in perspective, but $120 million into our local economy, that's almost equivalent to a Final Four NCAA tournament. That's the kind of numbers we're talking about. And those are unbelievable numbers for our city that help us fund a lot of other things that we do throughout the year. And it's the largest air show in the country. So one of my most proudest moments is I can't wait till September 29th, seeing those planes come across and seeing all the people here celebrating America, celebrating our military, and having the best air show in the country and the world. So as mayor, I'm going to be very, very proud of that day when it comes.
That total economic spend equates to about $120.7 million.
As you know, the Pacific Air Show filed a lawsuit against the city of Huntington Beach and then Mayor Carr in 2022. In the summer or fall, that's when the lawsuit was filed. And I think one of the things that maybe there's a misunderstanding about is a lot of people think that the lawsuit was filed basically that the air show was canceled in 2021. And as you recall, in 2021, we had the air show on, there was a, what do we call it, a dry run on the Friday, then there was an air show on Saturday, and then it was canceled on Saturday night, so no air show on Sunday. So people were saying, well, why would the city, and I'm fast forwarding a little, but I'll go back, why would the city settle if there was an oil spill and the city was forced to cancel? And really the issue, if you read the lawsuit and now the First Amendment complaint, it wasn't quite so much that it was canceled necessarily, although I'll let the plaintiffs make their own case. If you read the complaint, it's how it was canceled. It's how the plaintiffs make their own case. If you read the complaint, it's how it was canceled. It's how it was canceled. Settlement, it goes. Right when the settlement was struck, we prepared a memo of settlement terms. That memo of settlement terms reflects the actual terms that settled the lawsuit. Now I know, and I'm happy to answer questions, I'll be in the hot seat tonight, on why we haven't released the entire settlement agreement. And there's good reason for that, because there's more language in the settlement agreement beyond the terms of the settlement itself, meaning the terms that settled the lawsuit, meaning the terms that got the city dismissed from the case. There's more in there. The more in there, our attorneys who are outside attorneys working for the city, representing the city in the oil spill lawsuit, have advised me, please do not release the settlement agreement, because the full settlement agreement, because it could compromise our. But because there's pending litigation, I take responsibility, justified not releasing the entire settlement agreement. Because after reading state law and seeing the other moving parts at stake for the city, including the pending oil spill lawsuit, it was my judgment that doing so would compromise the success of the city in that lawsuit. And under state law, I was not required to. But there's an exception under essentially the Public Records Act, that I did not have to release it. So that's where we are on the settlement agreement and not releasing it. Having said that, there is a challenge to have it released. There's a court challenge, there's a lawsuit to have it released. I have always said, if a judge sees it differently than myself, and if a judge decides that it should be released, the entire full-form settlement agreement should be released to the public, that the concern about the pending oil spill litigation is not enough to justify keeping it sealed, then I'm happy to release it. And there's a lot of stories out there, oh, you're hiding something. I assure you, we're not hiding anything, except we're trying to be careful and diligent for the city. My job is to protect the best interests of the city, period. No matter what the circumstances are, and frankly, no matter what criticism comes my way. I own making the decision not to release the settlement agreement. That was not a decision by City Council. It was not a decision by the mayor. That was my decision. And I'm happy to go to court and have a judge tell me I'm wrong. But to me, to put it simply, I believed it was above my pay grade, essentially, to release it and risk compromising the city in a future lawsuit. I didn't believe that that would be fulfilling my obligations to defend the city. So I made the decision that I made. So we'll see what happens. I am not representing myself in that case. I do have an outside attorney. And I can't get into my conversations with outside counsel, but what I will tell you is I have also, or let me put it this way, I would be very interested in an early review by the court. So I don't want this to drag on. I would be happy if this question was answered today, whether it should be released or not. So I have an interest, it's just a personal interest, in getting this resolved quickly. So my attorneys know that, and they're acting accordingly, swiftly. So on that issue, we'll see what the court does with it. And I'm happy to live with it one way or the other. The settlement terms. I've heard a lot about $8 million in money going to Pacific Air Show. I don't know where that money came from, or that number came from. I will tell you expressly what the terms are, and they were released publicly. It's $4.99 million, basically essentially from the city's general fund, but it's $1.99 million this year, and the rest is spread out in 500,000 increments over the next 6 years. That's how you get to 4.99. There is a provision for potential additional $2 million, but that's not $2 million coming out of the general fund. That $2 million is contingent on the city prevailing in its oil spill lawsuit or securing perhaps a settlement. And if the city uses or is able to use effectively in that proceeding or process any of Pacific Airshow's damages, and recovery comes to the city because we were able to bolster the case by Pacific Airshow damages. So then, for instance, hypothetically, the city gets $30 million in a settlement, and we've put together all the city's damages and showed the harm to Pacific Airshow and other businesses throughout the city. Pacific Airshow is not the only one, but other businesses as well. And we get $30 million. If once that gets paid, we would owe up to $2 million. $2 million's a cap. Up to $2 million, depending on any contribution Pacific Airshow was able to make to the damages picture, either at settlement or at trial. So that's not money out of the general fund. You don't just simply add that $2 million to the $4.99 million and come up with almost $7 million. It just doesn't. That's not the way it works. So that's more or less a sum total of the dollars committed by the city council to resolving the Pacific Airshow. The city was dismissed by Pacific Airshow after the payment of $1.99, so that has been paid. With regard to the oil spill lawsuit, a lot of folks too have asked me, why are we so late in filing our oil spill lawsuit? Because other claimants or other litigants have already gotten a settlement, a large settlement from a multi-million-dollar resolution or settlement with some of the oil companies or oil spill, well, I call them oil spill defendants, just categorically. And the reason is because the prior city council didn't want to pursue litigation. So when the question came before the prior city council about whether we should pursue recovery on behalf of the city against the oil spill defendants, the answer was no. When the new city council came in, they asked, why aren't we pursuing, or are we pursuing against oil spill defendants? The answer was no. They said, well, let's change that answer. Let's say yes. So we, the city attorney's office, got authorization from the city council in December of 2022, just a few months ago, 6 months ago, to actually embark on pursuit of recovery on behalf of the city against the oil spill defendants. So that's a pretty recent phenomenon for the city. For other cities and other claimants, not so much. They started that process back in early 2022 or late 2021. But we're now coming, and it's in the hands, as I said, of outside counsel. So outside counsel has been working on the case. They've been interacting with various folks from City Hall to work up the case. And so that's basically where things are on the oil spill lawsuit. And again, in my judgment, didn't want to do anything to compromise the city by releasing the settlement agreement too early. In terms of other actions in court, as you may or may not know, Mark Bixby and Connie Boardman filed, I believe it was an intervention, a request to intervene into the Pacific Air Show versus City of Huntington Beach lawsuit. And basically, they expressly stated the reason we want to intervene or to interject into the lawsuit is because we want to stop the airshow settlement. So they filed 45 days before the case was actually dismissed against the city. Maybe 30 days before it was dismissed against the city. So they filed, and the court aptly and deftly recognized that they didn't have standing, because they attempted to make a taxpayer derivative argument for standing. And the answer to that by the court was no, you don't have standing to intervene like this. And really that's why they haven't filed a new lawsuit, even though their attorney was quoted in the newspapers threatening to file a new lawsuit. Because if you don't have standing to intervene, you're not going to have standing to file a new lawsuit on your own. Standing's a threshold, quintessential issue to move forward with a case. So if you're found to not have standing here, in the very same case, if you try to file a new lawsuit, you're not going to have standing there. You're not going to suddenly gain standing because weeks passed and the court denied you the first time. So I don't think any more challenges are coming by Borden and Bixby on trying to stop or unwind the airshow settlement. But it was, I think, rightly interpreted that if that were to have succeeded, and that action were to have stopped the airshow settlement, that we wouldn't have the airshow. So I think the court got it right on the law. I thought it was pretty clear from the beginning. But sometimes we've got to work these things out in front of a judge, and that's fine. So that's where we are on the Bixby Boardman. So that's in the rearview mirror. We have gotten other letters from like the Bolsa Chica Land Trust and other organizations complaining about the air show, but we've written back our strongly worded letters as well, and we haven't heard anything since. So there's a few different moving parts. As it stands right now, we don't see anything by way of lawsuit or litigation that would threaten the air show occurring this year. Trying to think of what else. I should probably wait for questions because I could just stand here all day and keep thinking of things. And I'd rather make sure that my comments are on point, right? Give a lawyer and a politician a microphone. And tell them they have just a few minutes to speak. Yeah, right. So anyway, with that, I think I am going to stop myself.
Hello, and thank you for taking your time. My name is Don Kennedy. I just wanted to set one thing clear. This nice lady said the word alleged revenue. I think Visit Huntington Beach has substantiated it. It's not alleged revenue, it's proved revenue through a very reliable set of sources. So I think we can put that to rest that it's accountable revenue. With that said, my question is this. In hearing that there's other oil, there's been other plaintiffs against the, as Mr. Gates said, oil defendants that had claimed and won judgments, why would our previous council not allow you, Mr. Gates, to pursue a lawsuit against the oil companies? And thank God the current council did, because it seems like there's going to be judgments on the horizon since there's a precedent of other plaintiffs winning. I'm shocked that the previous council would not have allowed you to just go full force against people that have a lot of money, and that's oil companies.
Good question. Just for clarification, I don't know that any plaintiff has gotten a judgment against any of the oil companies. Just for public consumption, I think it's important to make the distinction that there's a multi-million-dollar settlement of which those claimants or those litigants are benefiting. They're all a part of that larger settlement. Why? I can't tell you, probably without revealing closed session discussions, which I just can't do, I won't do. You could ask them. Maybe they'll tell you their own personal thoughts without revealing closed session. But I certainly can't reveal that. So, yeah.
I want to thank you for pursuing, I want to thank you, the current council, for pursuing that law. Go get us some money. Thank you.
With regular meetings with City Council, with information printed out in closed session memo form, which all that's confidential, so anybody taking notes about trying to submit a public records request, just note, a lot of this information shared with council was confidential. So, and I can't say what was discussed in closed session, what was put on the memos in closed session, and so all I can tell you is this. If you want to know more, and I don't want to embarrass anybody, so I won't ask for a show of hands of how many people have actually read the complaint. But there's a lot of questions and assumptions coming our way that suggest to me that not a lot of people have read the complaint. So if you want your answers, your questions answered, read the complaint. So that's what I'm just going to leave it at that.
Next question.
Yeah, I just have a quick question. You said, why would you?
Civic Air Show is the preeminent air show in the United States, bar none, bar none. You talk to the Blue Angels, you talk to the Thunderbirds, and those pilots will tell you this is their preferred destination, and they've had events where they both here at the same time. They never do that because of the event is well run. And also, keep in mind, Code 4 pays for the expenses. They've lost their butt. Over every single year, they've never made money. The first year they would have made money was the year that we canceled the air show. But let me get into one of the things here. First off, parking. We talked about parking as potential revenue. So normally, because it's a shoulder time of the year, it's not a normal event time of the year, our parking structures are virtually empty. During the air show, they're full, completely full. Normally we charge $15. During the air show, it's $30. The city doesn't lose a penny. In fact, the city makes incrementally more money because they're 100% occupancy, not half or quarter like they normally be at that time of the year. So that extra additional revenue goes to Code 4 to offset some of the expenses like the officers. But the majority of the expenses is saddled by Code 4 and they lose their butt. That's why there's not a lot of suitors come in here asking to run the air show, because it's very expensive and it takes a lot of time. And the professionalism of Code 4 is bar none. There's nobody around the country can stand up against it. Right? And lastly, there's a comment about the hotels, about the numbers don't match up. Well, also the numbers match up. When you look at a hotel room, it might be $300 normally, and it's $3,000 during the air show. That's 10 times as much revenue coming in. So you have to look at all these other factors you're not looking at from a surface level perspective. So last I'll say is it is a preeminent air show, and for us to not look at the payments for, let's say, $7 million amortized over 7 years. Well, let's multiply the $120 million over 7 years. That's $720 million that we're trying to turn around from and say we don't want it. That's ridiculous. That's money that's come directly into Huntington Beach and the surrounding community. So I think it's a subject that's a false flag, and we shouldn't be talking about it. Thank you.
Our city, despite a citizen who knows better than someone who's paid professionally to do economic studies around the world, I'll trust her more than the people who get paid to do those studies. End of the day, this is a local business. I wanted to make sure that we try to get it done. If we couldn't get it done, we couldn't get it done. And I will tell you, there was a lot of times I didn't think we were going to get it done. I didn't think we were going to get it done many times. You could ask my wife. When I came home, I was frustrated. At the end of the day, when we got it done, I was extremely proud, because I think this is going to be And all of you guys that don't want it, I hope you don't go to the air show because, you know critical at the end of the day. Disagreeing. We could agree to disagree without being disagreeable, and I respect your voice.
Police reform comes in many, many ways. No justice! No peace! No justice! No peace! No justice! No peace! No justice!
That's why I do these counts.
A little bit different. I wanted, we had a lot of reasons, I guess, various of this for one air show. I like the air show. I'm not sure I want to pay $8 million for it. For example, the $2 million that we hope to get in the lawsuit that we filed, that we would give them. You said, well, that doesn't come out of the general fund, but if we won the lawsuit, it would go into the general fund. So, that makes no sense to me. What I really came here to talk about is there's a point, it's page 11 in this economic report, and it's just full of baloney. It just makes no sense whatsoever. And I'd like to point out a few things. First thing,
If anybody has any question in their mind about the propriety of what happened, there are almost countless resources for you to go to get your recourse. File an FPPC complaint, file a complaint with the State Bar of California, file a complaint with the District Attorney, file a complaint with the Attorney General. There are a lot of aspersions cast based on half information or misinformation, yet the public has no shortage of recourse. You want to catch me on something? You can file a half a dozen complaints tomorrow with different agencies. Yet, nobody ever files anything. They're just critical because I happened to show up in a photograph with Kevin Elliott during the campaign.
So it's only the very radical left, unhinged, that want to get these books into the hands of these children. Why is that? I think they grasp onto the truth of something, that if you control the youth, you control the future. Yeah, that was Hitler, and they're taking that philosophy right out of his playbook and trying to get these sick images into the hands of these children, hoping to pervert their minds. Now check out this email I received after that video that came out. Yeah, I guess it is too bad for your kind that I did not die in combat. Because if there's one thing you know about SEALs, we die before we quit, and we could put in some miles. Hey, check this out. I got 500 of these I'm passing out just today in a neighborhood near you. Putting in the work. See you soon.